The October wind cut through the streets of Brooklyn like a blade, carrying with it the smell of rain-soaked asphalt and the distant promise of an early winter. Emma Martinez pressed her hand against her lower back as she pushed through the glass door of Murphy's Diner, the familiar ache radiating through her spine, a constant companion during these final weeks of pregnancy. 8 months. She was 8 months pregnant, and every step felt like carrying the weight of the world. "Emma, table 7 needs refills and the couple at the counter wants their check," Lou called from behind the register, his gruff voice barely audible over the clatter of dishes and the low hum of conversations that filled the diner. "On it," Emma replied, forcing a smile that didn't quite reach her eyes. She grabbed the coffee pot with one hand while steadying herself against the counter with the other. Her feet throbbed in the worn sneakers that had seen better days. Much like everything else in her life lately, the fluorescent lights of Murphy's Diner hummed overhead, casting everything in that particular shade of artificial warmth that made the place feel stuck in time. Red vinyl booths lined the windows, their surfaces cracked and patched with duct tape. The black and white checkered floor had lost its shine years ago, dulled by countless footsteps and half-hearted mopping. But it was work. It was income. It was survival. Emma made her rounds, refilling coffee cups and delivering checks with the practiced efficiency of someone who had learned to conserve every ounce of energy. The baby kicked, a strong, insistent movement against her ribs that made her pause mid-step. "You okay, hun?" Mrs. Chen, a regular who came in every Thursday night, looked up from her soup with concern etched across her weathered face. "Fine, just active baby," Emma said, managing a more genuine smile this time. Mrs. Chen reminded her of her grandmother, back when she still had family who cared, back when her life looked completely different. "You should be home resting, not on your feet like this," Mrs. Chen chided gently, the way only someone who had raised 5 children of her own could. Emma wanted to say that home was a relative term. That home for the past 3 weeks had been a cardboard barrier and a thin blanket behind the dumpsters of this very diner. That the small apartment she'd rented in Queens, the one she'd barely been able to afford even when she was working 2 jobs, was now occupied by someone else after she'd been evicted for missing 2 months of rent. Instead, she just nodded. "Soon. I'll rest soon." The lie tasted bitter, but it was easier than the truth. Emma's life hadn't always been balanced on the edge of catastrophe. There was a before, a time that felt increasingly like a dream she'd had once and then forgotten upon waking. Before meant teaching English at a public school in Queens, living in a cramped but clean apartment, planning a future. Before meant Marcus, the boyfriend who had promised forever but delivered 6 months and a positive pregnancy test before disappearing like smoke. She'd tried calling, texting, even showed up at his new apartment once. The woman who answered the door, younger, unburdened by pregnancy, had looked at Emma with something between pity and disgust before closing the door in her face. Before meant having her mother's number in her phone, someone to call in a crisis. But that bridge had burned years ago, a casualty of choices and words that couldn't be taken back. Her father was long gone, and her brother, well, Jake had his own problems last she heard, somewhere in Nevada, maybe Arizona. She'd lost track. The school had let her go in July. Budget cuts, they'd said, but Emma knew the truth. Pregnant, single, increasingly exhausted. She'd become a liability. They'd found someone cheaper, someone without complications. She'd tried to make it work, picked up shifts at Murphy's Diner, sold what little she owned, skipped meals so she could save every dollar for the baby that was coming whether she was ready or not. But ready or not, the world didn't care. The eviction notice came in September. The shelters were full. She'd tried 4 different ones, spent hours on waiting lists, filling out forms. "We'll call you," they all said. None of them did. So she'd adapted, survived, found that the space behind Murphy's Diner, between the dumpster and the brick wall, offered some shelter from the wind. Lou, the owner, never came out the back after closing. The night shift cook, Raphael, took smoke breaks on the other side of the building. It wasn't much, but it was something. By 10:47 p.m., the dinner rush had long since faded. Only a handful of customers remained. A tired truck driver nursing his 3rd cup of coffee, 2 college students cramming for an exam, and old Mr. Peterson, who came in every night and sat in the same booth, making a single plate of meatloaf last for 2 hours because his apartment was too quiet and too empty. Emma understood that feeling more than she cared to admit. "You can clock out," Lou said, appearing beside her with the suddenness of someone who'd spent 40 years moving through this diner's tight spaces. He was a big man, mid-60s, with arms like tree trunks and a face that had seen every kind of human drama play out in these booths. "Raphael can handle the stragglers." "You sure?" Emma asked, even though her body was already screaming for rest. Every muscle ached. Her ankles had swollen to twice their normal size, and the baby seemed determined to use her bladder as a trampoline. "Yeah, you look dead on your feet, kid." Lou's voice was gruff, but there was kindness underneath. He'd never asked why she sometimes arrived for her shift in the same clothes she'd worn the day before, or why she occasionally slipped extra food into her apron pocket. Some things didn't need to be said out loud. "Thanks, Lou." Emma clocked out, pocketing the $73 in tips she'd earned. A good night, relatively speaking. In the employee bathroom, she splashed cold water on her face and stared at her reflection in the spotted mirror. Dark circles shadowed her eyes. Her brown hair, once shiny and carefully maintained, hung limp around her shoulders. She'd been pretty once, she thought, or at least, she'd felt pretty. Now she just looked tired, worn down, like a pencil used to the nub. The baby kicked again, and Emma placed both hands on her swollen belly. "I know," she whispered. "I'm doing my best." She gathered her things, which amounted to a backpack containing a change of clothes, a water bottle, the pregnancy vitamins the free clinic had given her, and a small stuffed elephant she'd found at a thrift store for $2. It was blue, soft, meant for a baby to hold. She'd bought it in a moment of optimism, imagining a nursery that would never exist. The back door of Murphy's Diner opened onto an alley that smelled of grease, garbage, and the peculiar metallic scent of the city after dark. Emma slipped out quietly, checking to make sure Raphael was still inside. The last thing she needed was questions, concern, the kind of attention that led to intervention and somehow always made things worse. The temperature had dropped significantly. Emma could see her breath forming small clouds in the air. She zipped her thin jacket, inadequate for late October, laughable for the approaching winter, and made her way to her spot. "Home sweet home," she muttered darkly, settling onto the flattened cardboard she'd arranged behind the larger dumpster. The brick wall at her back still held some warmth from the day's sun, though that was fading fast. She wrapped the blanket around herself, a threadbare thing she'd found abandoned in a laundromat. Above, the sky was obscured by the buildings, but she could see a sliver of it between the roof lines. Dark, starless, the perpetual orange-gray of city night. The sound of traffic on Atlantic Avenue was a constant rumble, punctuated by sirens, car horns, the occasional shout. Emma closed her eyes and tried to sleep, knowing she needed rest, knowing that tomorrow would bring another shift, another day of pretending everything was fine. The baby moved inside her and she hummed softly, a song her grandmother used to sing, something in Spanish that she only half remembered the words to. She didn't cry. She'd learned that crying was a luxury she couldn't afford. Tears required energy, and energy was something she needed to conserve. The cold crept in slowly, insidiously. It started in her fingers and toes, then worked its way deeper. Emma pulled the blanket tighter, curled on her side, the only comfortable position left to her, and tried to think warm thoughts. She must have dozed, because she jerked awake to the sound of footsteps. Vincent Romano had never intended to walk down this particular alley. His meeting at the warehouse 2 blocks over had run late. Negotiations with suppliers who thought they could charge more, just because Vincent was younger than his predecessor, as if his age somehow made him less capable of making problems disappear. He'd corrected that assumption efficiently, the way his father had taught him before a rival's bullet had ended those lessons permanently. Now at 32, Vincent controlled 6 blocks of Brooklyn's underground economy, with the kind of iron grip that made men twice his age think very carefully before crossing him. He didn't rule through violence alone, though he was certainly capable of it when necessary. He ruled through strategy, through understanding that fear and respect were 2 sides of the same coin, and knowing exactly when to flip it. The November wind bit at his face as he walked, his security detail trailing at a discreet distance. Marco, his lieutenant and closest thing to a friend, had offered to bring the car around to the front, but Vincent had waved him off. He liked walking sometimes, liked the feel of the city at night, the honest sounds of it. He'd cut through the alley because it was faster, because he knew every shortcut in this neighborhood, had grown up running these streets when they'd belonged to his father, and his uncle before that. The Romano name meant something here, had for 3 generations. He was halfway through when he heard it, A sound so soft he almost missed it beneath the ambient noise of the city. A quiet, pained whimper, followed by what might have been singing, or might have been crying, or might have been both. Vincent's hand moved automatically to the weapon concealed beneath his coat. In his world, unexpected sounds in dark alleys usually meant trouble. He gestured sharply, and Marco and two others materialized from the shadows, hands on their own weapons. "Wait here," Vincent murmured, moving toward the sound with the careful, quiet steps of a predator who'd learned young that the difference between life and death was often nothing more than a footstep heard or unheard. Behind the dumpster, in a space barely wider than a coffin, he found her. A woman, young, pregnant, clearly in the final stages of it, curled on her side on flattened cardboard, wrapped in a blanket that looked like it had been salvaged from a dumpster. Her eyes were closed, her face pale in the dim light bleeding from a distant street lamp. She was shivering, small tremors that shook her whole frame, but she seemed to be asleep, or trying to be. Vincent stood there staring, his mind working through the implications, the situation, trying to understand what he was seeing. She was homeless, obviously homeless, pregnant and homeless, and sleeping behind a dumpster in 40-degree weather. He should walk away. Every practical bone in his body told him to walk away. This wasn't his problem. This was the kind of complication that smart men avoided, but something held him there, rooted to the grimy alley floor. Something about the way she was curled protectively around her swollen belly, one hand resting on it even in sleep, as if she could shield the baby from the cold, from the world, from everything that had gone wrong. Vincent thought of Isabella. He hadn't thought about his sister in months, had taught himself not to, because that way lay only pain and rage and a guilt that no amount of revenge could ever erase. But looking at this woman, he couldn't help it. Isabella had been 19, pregnant, terrified. The boyfriend had vanished the moment she'd told him. Their father had been dead for 6 months, killed in a territorial dispute. Their mother had fallen apart after, couldn't cope, couldn't function. Vincent had been trying to hold the organization together to step into his father's shoes at 25, surrounded by men who wanted to test him, to take what was his. He'd told Isabella he'd take care of her, that everything would be fine. She'd died in childbirth. The baby, a girl, Vincent's niece named Elena, had lived for 3 days before following her mother into whatever came after. Vincent had buried them both on a Tuesday, and then he'd gone and killed the boyfriend with his bare hands. That was 7 years ago. 7 years. And he'd learned to wall that grief off, to never let it touch the person he'd become. You couldn't show weakness in his world, couldn't afford softness. But standing here, looking at this woman who was someone's daughter, someone's sister maybe, someone who mattered even if the world had decided she didn't, Vincent felt something crack in that carefully constructed wall. He removed his coat. It was a nice coat, expensive, black wool, Italian, the kind of thing that cost more than most people made in a month. It was warm, warmer than anything this woman had. Vincent crouched beside her, moving carefully, quietly, and draped the coat over her like a blanket. She stirred at the touch, her eyes flying open with the startled fear of someone who'd learned that the world was not a safe place. For a moment, they stared at each other, her eyes wide, brown, terrified, his dark, guarded, unreadable. Emma's heart hammered against her ribs as she scrambled backward or tried to, hampered by her belly, by the wall at her back, by exhaustion and fear. The man crouching beside her was backlit by the distant street lamp, his face half in shadow, but she could see enough. Expensive suit, dark hair, the kind of presence that made the air feel heavier, and he'd just covered her with his coat. "Easy," he said, his voice low, calm, like he was trying not to spook a wounded animal. "Easy. I'm not going to hurt you." Emma's breath came in short, sharp gasps. Every instinct screamed at her to run, but where would she go? She was 8 months pregnant, exhausted, and this man, whoever he was, had already proven he was faster, stronger, could have done anything to her while she slept, but he'd given her his coat. "Who are you?" she managed, her voice hoarse from disuse and cold. "What do you want?" Vincent raised both hands slowly, palms out, a gesture of peace, though he knew from experience that peace was often just a temporary absence of violence. "I'm nobody," he said, which was a lie in every technical sense but felt true in this moment. "I was walking through. I heard you. I saw you. You're freezing. I'm fine." Another lie, but Emma clung to it like a lifeline. Admitting she wasn't fine, that she needed help, felt like the final surrender of her dignity. "You're not fine." Vincent's voice was matter of fact, not unkind. "You're pregnant, sleeping behind a dumpster in October. That's the opposite of fine." Emma's eyes filled with tears, the ones she'd been holding back for hours, days, weeks. She blinked them away furiously. "I don't need your pity." "Good. I'm not offering any." Vincent stood slowly, giving her space, showing her he wasn't a threat. "I'm offering you a coat. It's cold. You need it. That's not pity. It's just basic human decency." She stared up at him, trying to read him, to understand what he wanted. In her experience, nobody gave something for nothing. There was always a price, always an expectation. "What do you want from me?" she asked, and hated how small her voice sounded. Vincent was quiet for a moment, considering the question. What did he want? He didn't know. Absolution, maybe. A way to go back 7 years and save Isabella. A world where pregnant women didn't sleep behind dumpsters. "Nothing," he finally said. "I want nothing from you. Keep the coat. Don't freeze. That's it." He turned to leave, and Emma found herself saying, "Wait." Vincent paused, looked back. "Why?" she asked. "Why would you help me?" He could have told her the truth, about Isabella, about guilt, about the way the past never really stayed buried. But instead he just shrugged. Why not? And then he walked away, disappearing into the shadows of the alley like he'd never been there at all. Emma sat there, wrapped in a coat that still held the warmth of his body, the scent of expensive cologne and something else. Cigarette smoke, maybe, or the city itself. Her hand shook as she pulled it tighter around herself. The coat was heavy, well made, probably worth more than every possession she owned combined. The lining was silk, smooth against her chapped skin. For the first time in weeks, she felt genuinely warm. She should have given it back, should have run after him and returned it, because accepting gifts from strangers in dark alleys was how people got hurt, got trapped, got worse than they already were. But she was so cold, so tired, and the baby had finally stopped kicking. Lulled by the warmth, Emma lay back down, the coat wrapped around her like armor, and let herself drift towards sleep. Real sleep, the kind that came when your body finally relaxed, when survival shifted from immediate crisis to something approaching stability, even if just for a night. Vincent walked back to where Marco waited, his shoulders tense, his mind already trying to rationalize what he'd just done. "Everything okay, boss?" Marco asked, his hand still near his weapon, eyes scanning the alley for threats. "Fine. Nothing. Let's go." They walked in silence toward the black SUV parked at the curb. Vincent slid into the back seat, and Marco took his place in the passenger seat while Tony drove. The leather was cold, the interior dark except for the glow of the dashboard. "You gave her your coat," Marco said. It wasn't a question. Vincent didn't answer, just stared out the window at the passing streets. His streets, the kingdom he'd inherited and expanded, built on foundations of blood and fear and the kind of loyalty that came from equal parts respect and terror. "Vincent, I know." Vincent's voice was sharp. "I know what you're going to say." "Do you?" Marco turned in his seat, his weathered face serious. "Because what I'm going to say is that was a $4,000 coat, and you just gave it to a homeless woman you're never going to see again. So? So nothing. Just not like you, that's all." Vincent met his lieutenant's eyes. Marco had been there the day they'd buried Isabella, had helped dig the grave when the ground was too frozen for the gravediggers' machines to work properly, had never mentioned it since, because that was the arrangement. The past stayed buried with the dead. "She's pregnant," Vincent said quietly. Understanding flickered across Marco's face. He nodded once, then turned back around. "Okay. Okay? Yeah. Okay. I get it." They drove in silence for a while, heading back toward Vincent's apartment in Tribeca, the penthouse with the view of the river, the place that always felt too big, too empty, too much like a museum of a life he'd never really wanted, but had inherited anyway. "You think she'll be all right?" Marco asked as they crossed the bridge. Vincent thought about the woman wrapped in his coat, sleeping behind a dumpster, carrying a child into a world that had already failed her. "No," he said honestly. "I don't." "You gonna do something about it?" "Why would I?" "You gave her your coat." "It's a coat, Marco. It's a $4,000 coat, and you gave it to her because she was cold and pregnant and sleeping in an alley. That's not nothing." Vincent closed his eyes, leaning his head back against the seat. His sister's face floated in the darkness behind his eyelids. Young, scared, asking him to promise that everything would be okay. He'd made that promise. He'd been wrong. Boss? Marco's voice was gentle, the way it only got when they were alone, when the masks could slip just slightly. I'm thinking, Vincent said. He thought about obligations, about the difference between smart choices and right ones, about the fact that he'd spent 7 years building an empire on the ruins of his grief, and maybe, just maybe, that wasn't the only thing he could build. Find out who she is, he said finally. Vincent, I'm not asking for your opinion. Find out who she is, where she's from, why she's sleeping behind a dumpster. Be discreet. Marco sighed, but nodded. All right, I'll put someone on it. The SUV pulled up in front of Vincent's building. The doorman rushed to open the car door, greeting him with the deference of someone who knew exactly who Vincent Romano was and what he was capable of. Vincent rode the elevator to the penthouse, walked through the door into an apartment that cost more per month than most people made in a year, and stood in the dark, looking out at the glittering city spread beneath him like a map of conquered territory. Somewhere out there, a woman he didn't know was sleeping in an alley wrapped in his coat, and for reasons he couldn't fully explain, that mattered. That mattered more than it should. Emma woke to pale dawn light and the sounds of the city waking up. Delivery trucks, distant sirens, the metallic clang of the diner's back door opening. She jerked upright, momentarily disoriented, before reality crashed back. The coat, the man. Last night, she looked down at herself, still wrapped in the expensive coat, and for a wild moment wondered if she'd dreamed the whole thing. But no, the coat was real, heavy and warm, and definitely not hers. Raphael's voice drifted from the back door as he lit his first cigarette of the morning shift. Emma scrambled to her feet, ignoring the way her body protested, the way her bladder screamed for attention. She couldn't let Raphael see her, couldn't let anyone see her like this. She folded the coat carefully, reverently, and tucked it into her backpack. She'd return it somehow, find the man, give it back, make it clear she didn't need charity, even though she did, even though that coat had been the difference between sleeping and suffering through a night of shivering so violent it might have hurt the baby. Emma slipped out of the alley, walking quickly toward the public library that opened at 9. The bathroom there was cleaner than most, and she could wash up, change clothes, look presentable enough for her afternoon shift. Her phone, a cheap prepaid thing that barely held a charge, showed 7:23 a.m., hours to kill before work. She bought a $1 coffee from a bodega, made it last, sat in the library and pretended to read while her mind circled endlessly around the same questions. Who was he? Why did he help her? What did he want? And the most dangerous question of all, would he come back? Emma returned to Murphy's Diner at 2 p.m. for the evening shift. Lou gave her a curious look. Maybe he'd noticed the expensive coat tucked in her backpack, or maybe he just saw the confusion written all over her face. You good, kid? Yeah, fine, just tired. You're always tired, Lou said, but not unkindly. Go on. Tables need clearing. Emma dove into work, grateful for the distraction, for the familiar rhythm of taking orders and delivering food and smiling at customers who saw her as little more than a functionally invisible service provider. But part of her kept watching the door. Part of her kept expecting to see a man in an expensive suit walk through it, demanding his coat back, demanding something. He never came. By the time her shift ended at 10 p.m., Emma had almost convinced herself that it had been a one-time thing, a random act of kindness that she'd never fully understand, but should just accept and move on from. She clocked out, gathered her things, and headed toward the back door, and stopped. Because there, in the alley, leaning against the wall near her spot behind the dumpster, was the man from last night. He looked different in better light, younger than she'd thought, maybe early 30s, with dark hair and darker eyes and a face that would have been handsome if it wasn't so guarded. He wore a different coat tonight, and his hands were in his pockets, his posture casual but somehow coiled, like a spring ready to release. Hi, he said, as if this were the most normal thing in the world. Emma's heart pounded. What are you doing here? Making sure you didn't freeze to death. I'm fine. So you said. His eyes dropped to her belly, then back to her face. How far along? 8 months. She didn't know why she answered. Why do you care? Vincent considered the question. Why did he care? He still wasn't entirely sure, but standing here, seeing her in better light, young, exhausted, barely holding it together, he knew he couldn't just walk away. I brought food, he said, holding up a bag from a restaurant that Emma recognized as way beyond her budget. Real food. Not diner leftovers. I don't want your charity. It's not charity, it's dinner. You eat dinner, right? Emma wanted to refuse, wanted to hold on to her pride, but the smell coming from that bag made her stomach clench with hunger so intense it was almost painful. When was the last time she'd had a real meal? Something that wasn't stale bread or half-eaten customer leftovers. Why are you doing this? She asked, and hated the way her voice broke. Vincent looked at her for a long moment, and Emma saw something in his eyes. Grief, maybe, or guilt, or some complicated mixture of both. Because someone should, he said simply. And for the first time in months, Emma felt something shift inside her chest. Not hope, exactly. Hope was too big, too fragile. But maybe the possibility of hope. Okay, she whispered. Okay, I'll eat your food, but I'm returning the coat. Vincent smiled, barely, just a slight curve at the corner of his mouth. Keep the coat. You need it more than I do. He set the bag down on a relatively clean patch of concrete, nodded once, and walked away. Emma stood there staring at the bag, at the place where he'd been standing, trying to understand what was happening, what this meant, where this was going. She didn't know, but for the first time in a very long time, she wasn't facing the night alone. And maybe, just maybe, that was enough. 3 days had passed since the night Vincent Romano had given Emma his coat, and she'd seen him every single one of those nights. He never stayed long. He'd appear in the alley around closing time, always carrying food from different restaurants. Italian one night, Chinese the next, then a diner breakfast at midnight that included eggs, bacon, pancakes, and coffee so good it made Emma want to cry. They didn't talk much. He'd hand her the food, ask if she was okay, and leave before she could form a proper response. It was strange, unsettling, and if Emma was being honest with herself, it was the only thing keeping her going. But tonight, she'd decided, had to be different. She couldn't keep accepting help from a stranger, couldn't keep taking food and warmth and kindness without understanding what it cost, what he wanted in return. Because in Emma's experience, everything had a price. She'd washed the coat as best she could in the library bathroom sink, dried it carefully, folded it with more care than she'd given anything in months. It sat now in her backpack, ready to be returned. The evening shift at Murphy's Diner had been brutal. A large party of 12 had come in at 7, stayed until 9:30, and left a 15% tip that felt like an insult after 2.5 hours of constant service. Emma's feet throbbed, her back ached, and the baby had been kicking all day with an energy that suggested she'd be a soccer player. You look worse than usual, Lou commented as Emma collected her tips. $52. Better than nothing, but not enough to change anything substantial. Thanks, Lou. You really know how to make a girl feel special. I'm serious, kid. Lou's weathered face creased with concern. You need to see a doctor. When's the last time you had a checkup? Emma thought about the free clinic she'd gone to twice. The one that was always packed, where she'd waited 4 hours just to be told everything looked fine and to come back in a month. That had been 6 weeks ago. I'm fine, she said automatically. Emma, I'm fine, Lou. Really. Just tired. Lou studied her for a long moment, and Emma could see him working through something in his mind, weighing words he wasn't sure he should say. Finally, he sighed. There's been a guy, coming around, waiting in the alley after closing. Emma's stomach dropped. I know. You know? Lou's eyebrows shot up. Emma, that's not safe. You can't just meet strange men in alleys. He's not strange. I mean, he is, but he's not. He's been helping me. Helping you how? Emma hesitated. How could she explain it without revealing that she'd been sleeping behind the dumpster, that she was homeless, that her life had fallen apart so completely, that a stranger's coat was the difference between survival and hypothermia? He's just been nice, bringing food, making sure I'm okay. Lou's expression darkened. Emma, I've owned this diner for 40 years. I know this neighborhood, know the people in it, and I'm telling you, that man is dangerous. You know him? Know of him. Vincent Romano. Lou said the name like it tasted bad. His family. They're not good people, kid. They're involved in things. Bad things. And men like that don't help people out of the goodness of their hearts. There's always an angle. Emma felt something cold settle in her stomach. Vincent Romano. She finally had a name to put to the face, to the careful distance he kept, to the way he moved like violence was always just beneath the surface. What kind of bad things, she asked, even though part of her didn't want to know. Lou glanced around the diner, making sure they weren't overheard. The kind that get people hurt, the kind that end up in police reports and hospital beds. His father ran half of Brooklyn before someone put a bullet in him. Word is, Vincent's even more ruthless than the old man was. You need to stay away from him. I will, Emma said, but the words felt hollow. I'm giving back his coat tonight. After that, I won't see him again. Lou didn't look convinced, but he nodded. Good. Be careful, Emma. Whatever you're going through, and don't think I don't know you're going through something, it's not worth getting involved with people like that. Vincent was already in the alley when Emma stepped out the back door at 11:04 p.m. He leaned against the brick wall, illuminated by the weak glow of a distant security light, scrolling through his phone with the casual air of someone who owned the night itself. He looked up when he heard the door, and something in his expression softened. Hey, hi. Emma's voice came out steadier than she felt. She pulled the folded coat from her backpack. I need to give this back. Vincent frowned. It's going to be 38 degrees tonight. You need the coat. I need to give it back, Emma repeated firmly. I can't keep accepting things from you. I don't even know you. So get to know me. Why? The question burst out of her with more force than she'd intended. Why are you doing this? What do you want from me? Vincent was quiet for a moment, studying her face in the dim light. When he finally spoke, his voice was careful, measured. I don't want anything from you. I'm just trying to help. People don't just help, not for free. There's always something. Maybe I'm not most people. Lou says you're dangerous. Emma watched his face carefully, looking for a reaction. He says your family is involved in bad things, that I should stay away from you. Vincent's expression didn't change, but something flickered in his eyes. Resignation, maybe, or a bone-deep weariness. Lou's not wrong. The admission hung in the air between them. So I should stay away from you, Emma said, but it came out as a question rather than a statement. Probably. Vincent pushed off from the wall, closing some of the distance between them. But if you do, you'll sleep in the cold tonight, and tomorrow night, and every night until winter really hits, and then... He didn't finish the sentence. He didn't need to. Emma clutched the coat tighter, her knuckles white. I can take care of myself. I know you can. You've been doing it, but you shouldn't have to. Vincent's voice dropped lower, almost gentle. Look, I'm not going to pretend I'm a good person. I'm not. I've done things. He paused, seemed to choose his words carefully. I've made choices that keep me up at night. But I saw you, cold and pregnant and alone, and I couldn't just walk away. Maybe that makes me dangerous in a different way. I don't know. But I'm not asking you for anything. I'm just offering help. Why? Emma's eyes were filling with tears, and she hated it. Hated feeling this vulnerable, this exposed. Why me? Vincent was quiet for a long moment. When he finally spoke, his voice was rough with an emotion Emma couldn't quite identify. I had a sister, Isabella. She was 19, pregnant, and the father left when he found out. I was trying to hold things together after my father died, trying to prove myself, and I told her I'd take care of her, that everything would be fine. What happened? She died. Her and the baby both. Vincent's jaw tightened. I was too late, too busy, too focused on the wrong things, and I buried them on a Tuesday and realized that all the power I'd fought for, all the respect I'd earned, none of it mattered. None of it brought them back. Emma stood frozen, the coat still clutched in her hands. She saw it now, the way he looked at her belly, the careful distance he maintained, the food he brought with the dedication of someone fulfilling a promise made too late to the person it was meant for. I'm not your sister, she said softly. I know, but you could be someone's sister, someone's daughter, and if there's anyone out there who cares about you the way I cared about Isabella, I'd want someone to help you when they couldn't. There's no one, Emma admitted, the words tasting like defeat. My family, they're gone, or they might as well be. Vincent nodded, like this confirmed something he'd already suspected. Then let me help. No strings, no expectations, just let me help. Emma wanted to say no. Every survival instinct she'd developed over the past months screamed at her to refuse, to maintain her independence, to not get entangled with a man who admitted he was dangerous, who ran in circles that ended in police reports and hospital beds. But she was so tired, so cold, so scared of what would happen when winter really hit, when her pregnancy reached its final weeks, when the baby came and she had nowhere to bring her, no safe place to heal, no way to keep a newborn warm in an alley behind a dumpster. What kind of help? She asked, her voice barely above a whisper. Vincent seemed to consider his words carefully. I own some properties, small apartments, nothing fancy. There's one in Sunset Park, one bedroom, furnished, Quiet building. The tenant moved out last month. You could stay there. I can't afford rent. I'm not asking you to pay rent. Then what are you asking? Nothing. Stay there until you have the baby. Get back on your feet. Figure out your next move. That's it. Emma laughed, a harsh, disbelieving sound. Nobody offers someone a free apartment for nothing. I do. Vincent pulled out his phone, showed her photos of a small but clean apartment. Hardwood floors, large windows, a kitchen that looked about 100 years newer than anything Emma had seen in months. It's empty. You need a place. Simple math. Why would you do this? Because I can. Because you need it. Because... Vincent stopped, seemed to struggle with something. Because 7 years ago, I couldn't save my sister, but I can help you. So let me. Emma stared at the photos, at the clean walls and actual furniture and windows with curtains. She thought about sleeping in a real bed, taking a hot shower, having a door that locked between her and the world. She thought about the baby, about bringing her into a place that was warm and safe instead of cold and terrifying. There has to be a catch, she said, but her voice lacked conviction. The catch is that my world is complicated, dangerous sometimes. By accepting help from me, you're putting yourself in proximity to that. But the apartment is in a quiet building, in my name, but not obviously connected to me. You'd be safe there. You can't promise that. No, Vincent admitted. I can't, but I can promise I'll do everything in my power to make sure you are. Emma closed her eyes, feeling the weight of the decision pressing down on her. Accept help from a dangerous man, or continue surviving in an alley until she couldn't anymore. Those were her options. That was what her life had become. I don't even know you, she said again, weaker this time. Then get to know me. Ask me anything. Okay. Emma opened her eyes, met his gaze directly. Are you a criminal? Vincent didn't flinch. By legal definition? Yes. Have you hurt people? Yes. Killed people? A pause, longer this time. Yes. Emma should have run. Should have grabbed her backpack and run as far and fast as her pregnant body could carry her. Instead, she asked, why are you telling me the truth? Because you asked, and because if you're going to accept help from me, you should know who I am, what I am. What are you? Vincent smiled, but there was no humor in it. Complicated. Despite everything, the fear, the uncertainty, the warning bells ringing in her head, Emma found herself almost smiling back. That's one word for it. Look, Vincent said, his voice serious again. I'm not asking you to trust me. I'm not asking you to like me or approve of what I do. I'm just asking you to let me give you a safe place to sleep and have your baby. After that, if you never want to see me again, fine. But right now, tonight, you need help, and I'm offering it. Emma looked down at her belly, at the curve of life growing inside her, at the daughter who would be born into whatever choices Emma made tonight. She thought about the alley, the cold, the terrifying uncertainty of facing childbirth with nothing and no one. If I say yes, she started slowly. There are rules. Okay, this doesn't mean I owe you anything. Not money, not anything else. Agreed. If I feel unsafe, if anything feels wrong, I leave. No questions. No consequences. Agreed. And you tell me the truth, always. About who you are, what you do, any danger that might be coming. I need to be able to make informed choices. Vincent studied her for a long moment, and Emma saw something like respect flicker across his face. Okay. Truth, always. Even when it's ugly. Especially when it's ugly. Deal. Vincent extended his hand. Emma looked at it. Strong, scarred, the hand of someone who'd built an empire on foundations she didn't want to think about too carefully. She thought about Isabella, about the sister Vincent had lost, about the way grief had carved valleys in his expression when he spoke about her. She took his hand. His grip was firm, but careful, mindful of her condition, her vulnerability. Deal, she whispered. 24 hours later, Emma stood in the doorway of an apartment she could barely believe was real. It was small, maybe 500 square feet, but it was clean. The hardwood floors were scratched but swept. The walls were painted a soft cream color. Sunlight streamed through windows that overlooked a quiet street in Sunset Park, filtered through curtains that actually matched. There was a couch that looked relatively new, a small dining table with 2 chairs, a bed with clean sheets already on it. The kitchen was tiny but functional, a stove that worked, a refrigerator that hummed quietly, cabinets that closed properly. The bathroom had a shower with actual water pressure and a mirror that wasn't cracked. Emma had stood in that bathroom for 5 full minutes just staring at herself in the complete mirror, barely recognizing the exhausted woman who stared back. Is it okay? Vincent stood in the doorway watching her carefully. He'd brought her here himself, driving a nondescript sedan instead of the black SUV she'd seen him arrive in once. Marco had followed in another car, carrying boxes of supplies Vincent had apparently bought. Groceries, toiletries, towels, basic necessities. Emma's voice cracked. It's more than okay. Good. Vincent gestured to the kitchen where Marco was putting away the groceries with the efficiency of someone who'd done this kind of thing before. Marco stocked the kitchen with basics. If you need anything specific, just let me know. Emma watched Marco, a man in his late 40s with gray-streaked hair and the kind of weathered face that suggested he'd seen things nobody should see. He moved with the same controlled grace as Vincent, the same awareness of his surroundings. Thank you, she called out, unsure of the etiquette for thanking a mob enforcer for buying you groceries. Marco looked up, nodded once. No problem, miss. We got you the prenatal vitamins too, and some of that tea that's supposed to be good for pregnancy. My sister swore by it with her 3. The casual domesticity of the moment felt surreal. Here she was, accepting help from people who probably did terrible things in the dark, and they were discussing pregnancy tea. I don't know how to thank you, Emma said, turning back to Vincent. You don't need to, just... He paused, seemed to choose his words carefully. Just take care of yourself. And the baby. That's enough. I'll pay you back, somehow. When I can work again after the baby comes, Emma. Vincent's voice was firm but not unkind. I don't want you to pay me back. This isn't a loan, it's just help. Why don't I believe that people just help for no reason? Because people usually don't, Vincent admitted. But sometimes they do. Sometimes they need to, even if they can't fully explain why. Marco finished in the kitchen and approached them. All set, boss. I'm gonna head out unless you need anything else. We're good, thanks, Marco. Marco nodded to Emma. You need anything? You got Vincent's number. He'll make sure you get it. Take care of yourself and that baby. Then he was gone, leaving Emma alone with Vincent in an apartment that felt both like salvation and like a trap she couldn't quite see the edges of yet. I should let you get settled, Vincent said, moving toward the door. My number's on the counter. Call if you need anything. And I mean anything, middle of the night, emergency, just want to talk, whatever. Vincent? Emma called as he reached the door. He turned back. Yeah? Lou warned me about you. Said you're dangerous. That people around you get hurt. Vincent's expression didn't change. Lou's right. So why am I here? Why did you help me if being around you is dangerous? Because the alternative, you sleeping in an alley in November, was more dangerous. At least this way I can try to keep you safe. From what? From my world, mostly. The people in it. Vincent leaned against the door frame, his face serious. There are men who would use you to get to me if they knew you mattered. That's why the apartment's not obviously connected to me. Why Marco was careful about the supplies. As far as anyone needs to know, you're just a tenant in a building I own. Nothing special. But I'm not, Emma said slowly, understanding dawning. I'm not just a tenant. No, Vincent met her eyes. You're someone I'm trying to keep alive. Which, in my world, makes you important, which makes you a target if the wrong people find out. So we're careful. Emma's hand moved instinctively to her belly. Maybe this was a mistake. Maybe You should stay here, where it's warm and safe. The danger from me is theoretical. The danger from the cold and the streets is immediate. We'll manage the rest. How? Carefully. By being smart. By you living your life normally and me being discreet. You're asking me to trust you. I'm asking you to trust that I have more reason to keep you safe than to let anything happen to you. Vincent straightened his hand on the doorknob. Get some rest, Emma. Real rest in a real bed. You look like you haven't slept properly in months. I haven't. Then start tonight. Lock the door behind me. There's food in the kitchen, hot water in the shower, and nobody's going to bother you here. Just rest. He was gone before Emma could respond, the door clicking shut behind him with a finality that felt both terrifying and liberating. Emma stood alone in the apartment, her apartment at least for now, and slowly turned in a circle, taking it all in. The quiet, the warmth, the safety of 4 walls and a door that locked. She walked to the bedroom, sat on the edge of the bed, and felt the mattress give beneath her weight. Real springs, real support, not cardboard and concrete. The baby kicked and Emma put both hands on her belly. We're going to be okay, she whispered, wanting to believe it. We're safe here, at least for now. She lay back, just meaning to rest for a moment, and fell asleep in seconds. The deep, exhausted sleep of someone whose body had been waiting months for permission to truly rest. Emma woke up 12 hours later, disoriented and panicked before she remembered where she was. Sunlight streamed through the windows. Real sunlight, not the dim gray of alley shadows. She was warm. The bed was soft. She was safe. She spent the first few days in a kind of daze, unable to fully process the change in her circumstances. She showered 3 times the first day, just because she could, just to feel clean water and actual water pressure. She cooked real food in the kitchen. Nothing fancy, just eggs and toast, but it felt like luxury after months of cold leftovers and donated meals. Vincent didn't come by, but he texted, brief messages checking in, making sure she had what she needed, reminding her that his number was always available. Vincent, you okay? Emma, yes, thank you. Vincent, need anything? Emma, no, I'm good. It felt strange, this new dynamic. He'd given her everything she needed and then stepped back, giving her space, letting her adjust. It should have been a relief, but instead, Emma found herself missing him. Not exactly, but aware of his absence. On the 4th day, she ventured out to the grocery store 3 blocks away. Her tips from Murphy's diner. She'd given her notice to Lou, explaining she'd found a place to stay, gave her enough for basic supplies. The neighborhood was quiet, mostly residential, with corner stores and small restaurants and the kind of lived-in feel that spoke of families and stability. Emma felt conspicuous, like everyone could see that she didn't belong here, that she was living in an apartment she hadn't earned, courtesy of a dangerous man she barely knew. But nobody stared. Nobody seemed to care. She was just another pregnant woman buying groceries, anonymous and unremarkable. When she returned to the apartment, Vincent was waiting in the hallway outside her door. Emma's heart jumped. Is something wrong? No, just checking on you. He looked different in daylight. Still guarded, still carrying himself like violence was always an option, but somehow more human. Can I come in? Emma hesitated, then unlocked the door. Okay. Vincent followed her inside, his eyes scanning the apartment with the practiced awareness of someone who always assessed spaces for threats and exits. You settling in okay? Yeah, it's good. Really good. Emma set her groceries on the counter and started unpacking them, needing something to do with her hands. I wasn't expecting you. I should have called first. Sorry. It's your apartment. It's your home. There's a difference. Vincent leaned against the counter, maintaining a respectful distance. I wanted to talk to you about something. Emma's stomach tightened. Here it was. The catch, the price, the thing she'd been waiting for since the beginning. Okay. You need to see a doctor. A real doctor, not a free clinic. When's the last time you had a checkup? I don't know, 6 weeks, maybe 7? Vincent's expression darkened. You're 8 months pregnant. You should be seeing someone every week. I know that. But doctors cost money and I don't have insurance and I'll pay for it. Vincent, I'll pay for it, he repeated firmly. And before you argue, think about the baby. She needs you healthy. She needs to know everything's okay. So you're going to see a doctor and I'm paying, and that's not negotiable. Emma wanted to argue, wanted to maintain her independence, but he was right. She'd been worried about the baby, about the lack of movement sometimes, about the pains that shot through her back, about 1,000 tiny things that probably meant nothing but might mean everything. Okay, she said quietly, but I'm paying you back. Sure, when you're back on your feet and working again. Until then, let me do this. Why? Because I can, because you need it, because… Vincent stopped, seemed to struggle with something. Because nobody did it for Isabella, and maybe if someone had, things would be different. So I'm doing it for you. Call it selfish if that makes it easier to accept. Emma studied his face, the grief still raw in his eyes when he mentioned his sister. It's been 7 years. Some things don't get easier with time. They just get more familiar. I'm sorry. Don't be. Just let me help. Vincent pulled out his phone. I know a doctor. She's good, discreet, and she owes me a favor. I'll set up an appointment for this week. A favor? What kind of favor? Vincent smiled slightly. The kind where I didn't let certain information about her ex-husband reach certain people. Don't worry. She's legitimate, well-respected. You'll be in good hands. That night, lying in the comfortable bed in the warm apartment, Emma stared at the ceiling and tried to understand what was happening to her life. A month ago, she'd been sleeping behind a dumpster, convinced she'd hit rock bottom. Now she had an apartment, food, safety, and a complicated connection to a man who admitted he was a criminal, but treated her with more care than anyone had in years. It should have felt wrong. Instead, it felt like breathing after months of drowning. And that, Emma thought, might be the most dangerous thing of all. Emma had never realized how much pregnancy exhausted a person until she finally had a place to rest properly. In the 3 weeks since moving into the Sunset Park apartment, she'd slept more than she had in the previous 3 months combined. Her body was slowly recovering. The dark circles under her eyes had faded slightly, and her swollen ankles had returned to something approaching normal size. Vincent visited 3 times a week, always texting first, always bringing something. Baby clothes from Target, a crib he'd assembled himself one afternoon while Emma watched in bemused silence, prenatal vitamins, books about newborn care that he'd apparently researched online. "You know you don't have to do all this," Emma said one evening, watching him organize tiny onesies by size in the dresser he'd also provided. "I know." Vincent held up 2 onesies, one yellow with ducks, one green with elephants. "Which one do you like better?" "Vincent, seriously, you've done so much already." He set down the onesies and turned to face her, his expression serious. "Emma, in 3 weeks you're going to have a baby. An actual human baby who needs things. Let me help make sure you have those things." "But why? I still don't understand why you're doing this." Vincent was quiet for a moment, leaning against the dresser. "You want the truth?" "Always. Because I can. Because I have money I didn't earn honestly sitting around doing nothing. And you need help. And maybe," he paused, choosing his words carefully, "maybe helping you makes me feel a little less like the person my choices have turned me into." Emma studied his face, the sharp angles, the guarded eyes, the tension he carried in his shoulders like armor. In 3 weeks, she'd learned things about him, that he drank his coffee black, that he had a scar above his left eyebrow from a fight when he was 16, that he read actual books, not just his phone, and sometimes quoted things from memory when he thought she wasn't paying attention. She'd also learned that when his phone buzzed with certain calls, his entire demeanor changed. His voice would drop, become harder, colder. He'd step into the hallway, and she'd hear fragments, names, locations, problems that needed solving, reminders that the man organizing baby clothes was the same man who'd admitted to hurting people, to worse things he wouldn't specify. "You're not a bad person, Vincent," Emma said softly. "Yes, I am. I've made choices. You're a person who's made bad choices. That's different." Vincent smiled, but there was sadness in it. "Is it? I think so. Bad people don't assemble cribs for pregnant women they barely know. Maybe I'm just complicated." "Yeah," Emma smiled back. "You said that before. I'm starting to believe it." Dr. Sarah Chen's office was in a nice part of Brooklyn Heights, the kind of place with comfortable waiting rooms and actual magazines from this year. Emma felt out of place in her worn maternity jeans and Target sweater, surrounded by women in expensive yoga clothes with designer diaper bags already prepared. Vincent had driven her, waited in the lobby despite her protests that he didn't need to stay. When the nurse called her name, Emma looked back to see him already absorbed in his phone, managing whatever part of his business required constant attention. Dr. Chen was in her early 40s, professional but warm, with kind eyes behind stylish glasses. She didn't ask questions about how Emma could afford her services, just conducted a thorough examination and ultrasound. "Everything looks good," Dr. Chen said, showing Emma the screen where her daughter's heartbeat pulsed strong and steady. "She's measuring right on track for 37 weeks. Have you thought about a birth plan?" Not really. I guess I'll just go to the hospital when it's time." "You're alone? No partner? No family?" Emma hesitated. "I have a friend. He said he'd take me when it's time." Dr. Chen's expression suggested she understood more than Emma had said. "Good. You'll want someone with you. The hospital I'm affiliated with has excellent labor and delivery services. I'll make sure they have your file." When Emma returned to the waiting room, Vincent stood immediately, pocketing his phone. "Everything okay?" "Perfect. She's healthy. Strong heartbeat." Something shifted in Vincent's expression. Relief, maybe, or joy. "That's good. That's really good." They walked to his car in silence, but it was a comfortable silence, the kind that had developed over 3 weeks of dinners and conversations and slowly learning to exist in each other's space. "Vincent?" Emma asked as he navigated Brooklyn traffic. "Yeah? Thank you. For all of this. The doctor, the apartment, everything. I know I keep saying it, but you don't have to thank me. I do, though, because nobody else did this. Nobody else even tried." Vincent's hands tightened on the steering wheel. "Then they were fools. You and that baby. You deserve someone looking out for you. Emma felt her eyes sting with tears. Pregnancy hormones, exhaustion, or maybe just the overwhelming reality of someone caring after so long without it. I'm going to pay you back someday, I promise. Emma, I mean it. When I'm back on my feet, when I'm working again, I'll pay back every cent. Okay, Vincent said quietly. If that's important to you, okay. But there's no rush, no pressure. Just focus on getting through the next few weeks. That night, Emma lay in bed feeling the baby move. Strong kicks and rolls that suggested she'd be active, energetic, full of life. She thought about Vincent, about the strange friendship they'd developed, about how wrong it should feel to depend on someone like him. But it didn't feel wrong. It felt like the first right thing that had happened to her in a very long time. It happened on a Tuesday, 2 weeks later. Emma woke at 4 a.m. to a pain that wrapped around her entire abdomen like a vice grip. She lay still, breathing through it, telling herself it was Braxton Hicks, practice contractions, nothing serious. But the pain came back, and again, with increasing regularity. By 5 a.m. she was timing them, 7 minutes apart, lasting 45 seconds each. Her water hadn't broken, but something was happening. Something real and terrifying and undeniable. The baby was coming. Emma grabbed her phone with shaking hands and called the only number that made sense. Vincent answered on the second ring, his voice alert despite the early hour. Emma? What's wrong? I think... Another contraction hit, stealing her breath. I think it's time. The baby's coming. I'm on my way. 10 minutes. Can you get to the door? Yes, I think so. Do it now. Unlock it. I'm coming. Emma managed to reach the door, unlock it, and collapse onto the couch as another contraction rolled through her. She'd read about labor, knew intellectually what to expect, but the reality was overwhelming. Pain and pressure, and the terrifying knowledge that there was no going back, that her life was about to change irrevocably. Vincent burst through the door exactly 9 minutes later, Marco right behind him. He took one look at Emma doubled over on the couch and moved into immediate action. How far apart? He asked, his voice calm but urgent. 5 minutes now, maybe less. Marco, get the car. Emma, can you walk? I don't know. Another contraction, stronger than the others. Vincent knelt beside her, his hand on her shoulder. You can do this. We're going to get you to the hospital. The doctor's meeting us there. Everything's going to be okay. Emma wanted to believe him, wanted to feel reassured, but all she could feel was fear, raw and primal and all-consuming. Vincent helped her stand, supported her weight as they made their way to the elevator. Marco had the car running, and they got Emma into the back seat just as another contraction hit. Breathe, Vincent said, sliding in beside her. In through your nose, out through your mouth, like this. He demonstrated, and Emma tried to follow, focusing on his steady presence beside her as Marco drove through Brooklyn's pre-dawn streets with careful urgency. They made it to the hospital in 15 minutes. Dr. Chen was waiting at the entrance with a wheelchair and 2 nurses. You're doing great, Emma, Dr. Chen said, taking charge immediately. Let's get you upstairs and see how far along you are. The next hours were a blur of pain and pressure, and medical terminology Emma barely understood. She was 6 centimeters dilated, too far along for an epidural according to Dr. Chen. The baby was coming fast, faster than typical for a first birth. Vincent stayed through all of it. He held her hand through contractions that made her scream. He wiped sweat from her forehead and told her she was strong. She could do this. She was almost there. When Emma said she couldn't, that it was too much, he looked her in the eyes and said, Yes, you can. You've survived everything else. You can survive this. At 9:47 a.m., Sofia Maria Martinez entered the world screaming, red-faced and perfect. Emma had never felt anything like the moment they placed Sofia on her chest, warm and wriggling and impossibly small. All the pain, all the fear, all the months of struggle crystallized into this single, perfect moment of meeting her daughter. Hi, baby, Emma whispered, tears streaming down her face. Hi, Sofia. I'm your mom. I'm your mom. Vincent stood back, giving them space, but Emma could see his face. The raw emotion he wasn't quite managing to hide, the way his eyes glistened with unshed tears. You want to hold her? Emma asked after the nurses had cleaned Sofia up and wrapped her in a pink blanket. I shouldn't. Vincent, you got us here. You made this possible. Hold her. He approached carefully, like Sofia was made of glass, and took her with the awkward gentleness of someone who hadn't held a baby in years. Sofia squirmed, then settled, her tiny hand wrapping around Vincent's finger. Emma watched something break open in his face. Grief and joy tangled together, memories of his sister mixing with the present moment, 7 years of guilt meeting this perfect, innocent new life. "She's beautiful," Vincent said, his voice rough. "Emma, she's perfect." "Yeah," Emma whispered. "She is." The moment was interrupted by Marco appearing in the doorway, his expression tense. He gestured to Vincent, who reluctantly handed Sophia back to Emma and stepped into the hallway. Emma couldn't hear their conversation, but she could see it through the window. Marco talking urgently, Vincent's expression darkening, both men speaking in low, intense tones that suggested bad news. When Vincent returned, his face had shifted back to the guarded mask he wore when dealing with his other life. "Everything okay?" Emma asked, though she knew it wasn't. "Yeah, just business. Nothing for you to worry about." But his eyes said differently. "Vincent, I need to step out for a bit, handle something, but I'll be back. I promise." He was gone before Emma could respond, leaving her alone with Sophia and a creeping sense that something had changed, that the bubble of safety they'd existed in for the past 5 weeks was about to burst. Vincent returned 3 hours later, and Emma knew immediately that something was seriously wrong. His suit jacket was gone, his shirt slightly disheveled, and there was a controlled tension in his movements that suggested violence barely contained. "What happened?" Emma asked, holding Sophia protectively. "We need to talk." Vincent pulled a chair close to her bed, his expression grave. "There's a problem. A man named Alexei Volkov. He's a rival, runs territory in Brighton Beach. He's been watching me, trying to find weaknesses, ways to hurt me." Emma's stomach dropped. "And he knows about me." "Yeah, he knows about you. And now he knows about Sophia." "How?" "Because I wasn't careful enough. Because I visited you regularly. Because people talk. Because in my world, information is currency, and someone sold ours." Vincent's jaw tightened. "I'm sorry, Emma. I tried to be discreet, but what? What does this mean?" Vincent met her eyes. "It means you're in danger. You and Sophia both. As long as Volkov thinks you matter to me, he'll use you to get to me. It's how this works." Emma felt cold fear wash over her. "So what do we do?" "I have options. I can increase security, put people on you 24/7. I can move you somewhere safer, farther from the city. I can—" He stopped, seemed to struggle with something. "Or I can walk away completely. Make it clear you mean nothing to me, that you were just charity, nothing more. Eventually Volkov would lose interest. You'd walk away?" Emma couldn't keep the hurt from her voice. "To keep you safe? Yes, in a heartbeat. But you don't want to." "No." Vincent's voice was barely a whisper. "I don't want to." Emma looked down at Sophia, sleeping peacefully against her chest, unaware of the danger surrounding her life from day one. She thought about the past 5 weeks, about Vincent's steady presence, his care, the way he'd held her hand through labor, and looked at Sophia like she was precious. "I heard you," Emma said quietly, "in the hallway earlier talking to Marco. You weren't just discussing business, were you? You were discussing me. Us." Vincent's expression confirmed it. "What exactly do you do, Vincent? I know you said you're involved in things, but what specifically?" "Emma, truth. You promised me truth. What do you do?" Vincent was quiet for a long moment. When he spoke, his voice was flat, factual. "I control distribution networks. Goods coming into Brooklyn, goods going out. Some of it's legal. Most of it isn't. I manage relationships with other organizations, negotiate territories, resolve disputes." "Resolve how?" "However necessary." He met her eyes. "Sometimes with money, sometimes with threats, sometimes with violence. I run an organization built on fear and loyalty, and I'm good at it because I learned from my father, who was good at it, who learned from his father before him. It's what I know. It's who I am." Emma felt tears burning her eyes. "I can't have my daughter around this life, Vincent. I can't raise her in a world where people get hurt, where violence is just business, where—" "I know." Vincent's voice cracked slightly. "I know. You're right. You deserve better. Sophia deserves better. So what do we do?" Vincent stood, moved to the window, his back to her. "I walk away. I set you up somewhere safe, make sure you have money to get back on your feet, and I disappear from your life. Marco will keep an eye on you from a distance, make sure Volkov backs off, but I stay away. Completely. That's it? You just leave? It's the only way to keep you safe." Emma looked at Sophia, at her daughter's perfect, peaceful face, and felt her heart breaking. Vincent had saved them, had given them a chance. And now, because of who he was, because of the world he moved in, he had to leave. Okay, she whispered. If that's what keeps her safe, then okay. Vincent turned, and Emma saw raw pain in his face. I'm sorry, Emma, for all of it. For dragging you into this, Don't. You didn't drag me anywhere. You saved us. I'll never forget that. Take care of her. Vincent's voice was rough. Take care of both of you. We will. He left without looking back, and Emma held Sophia close, crying quietly into her daughter's soft hair, mourning something that had never quite been but might have become something beautiful if the world had been different, if they had been different people, if life was fair. But life wasn't fair. Emma had learned that lesson long ago, and now, holding her daughter, she learned it again, that sometimes the people who save you can't stay, that sometimes love means letting go, that sometimes the best thing someone can do is walk away, even when it breaks both of you to do it. 1 week after Vincent left, Emma struggled alone with newborn Sophia in the apartment. Every sound made her jump. Every shadow felt like a threat. Then it happened. 3 men broke through her door while Sophia slept. Volkov's men. Emma managed one call to Vincent before they took her phone. He abandoned you, one man sneered. You mean nothing to him. But Vincent came. With Marco and his entire crew, he stormed Volkov's warehouse. Emma clutched Sophia as gunfire echoed. Brief, brutal, terrifying. Vincent reached them, blood on his shirt from a shoulder wound. I've got you. You're safe. In the aftermath, Vincent made his choice. I'm getting out, setting up Marco to take over. It'll take time, but I'm done with this life. 6 months later, Emma taught at a school again. Vincent attended his first parent-teacher conference with her. No longer the boss, just a man trying to change. Sophia took her first steps toward Vincent as Emma watched. Not perfect, not a fairy tale. Just 2 broken people choosing hope, choosing each other, choosing to believe that even dangerous men could find redemption through love.